Tell me a little bit more about what you're working on at Nova.
Sure. We are a global credit bureau, which doesn't sound particularly exciting, but I can certainly spice it up in all sorts of ways.
Well, tell me, like, if you're at the bar and you're trying to impress someone, how do you talk about Nova?
Well, typically, I'll ask them where they're from pretty early on. Yeah. So, Jason, I assume you're from Canada.
Yeah.
So if I saw you at a bar and you just came to the States from Canada, I'd say, have you had trouble getting a credit card? And then from there, I would sort of understand your journey to establishing credit once you've moved, and happy to share a little bit more about how that works. But I see Alex has joined us and maybe taking away some of our fun here.
Yeah, Jason.
Let's work for time.
Jason, I want to hear about this credit card. Do you have one? And do you want to go along with the conversation? Maybe I'll drop off because I seem to be having a horrible connection.
No, you got it. It's
okay.
I think we can blame it on the software tonight. Hey, this is great. I'm excited to watch you guys have this chat.
So Misha, I think you did a great job of explaining Nova. So it's helping people that don't have credit can move from a country to another country to get credit. So let maybe take a step back. How did you come up with the idea? Why was this your perfect problem to solve?
So maybe just a little bit of just personal background and like company formation backgrounds. First of all, pleasure to be here, Alex. Thanks for having me, and to everybody out there. I'm Misha, one of the co-founders of Nova Credit. Unfortunately, my co-founder Nikki wasn't able to join, but we'll do my best to fill her shoes. We started originally. I'm from Russia originally. Came to the States when I was a kid. And Nova Credit started as a research project at Stanford University, where we were just interested in just credit behavior. How do students make financial decisions? We were asking all of our classmates, where'd you get a credit card? How'd you get a student loan? How'd you make those decisions? Who'd you go to for advice? And after doing a few dozen interviews, it just became really obvious that half of the people we were speaking with were foreign students or national students. And 100% of them were like, this sucks. I can't get a credit card. I can't get an auto loan. I can't get a student loan. I have to go beg my classmate to put me on their T-Mobile plan. I think you use Roger in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Basically the problem statement was very clear, and sort of we knew we were onto something.
So how'd you you found this problem? I actually experienced, because I moved to the States twice, and both times I had no credit because it'd been like 10 years between them. How'd you know who to start this with? How did you find your co-founders? And what did people say when you wanted to solve this problem? They say this is easy to do?
Well, I think when we first started, we were lucky in being enrolled in a university that had a pretty strong like entrepreneurial curriculum, and so we were actually in these classes getting taught how to do real user research. User research you think is like a simple thing. You just talk to people, but in practice, it's actually really hard to do right and do without bias, because when you're investigating a problem, you're going in with all these pretenses around like what that problem is and what challenges people have. But doing so in a really unbiased, open-minded way is not that easy. And so we uncovered this problem, and then we spent basically an entire quarter conceptualizing different ways of potentially solving it. We obviously thought about solving on a direct-to-consumer basis, so actually giving credit cards to immigrants or giving student loans to immigrants. But ultimately, where we landed was we wanted to solve this problem on a systemic level, meaning we wanted to actually build the infrastructure, build the pipelines to allow people to move their identity, their financial identity with them as they move around the world. And when they do that, be able to access all the financial services they need.
And how did you know you and your co-founders were the right people, the right group to start to tackle this?
We were just naive and optimistic, and I think you need a healthy dose of both to get started. When we first started, we knew basically nothing about credit reporting. It's sort of this strange industry dominated by in the U.S. Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. In Canada, Equifax and TransUnion. We now work with all of them. But we spent a lot of time just doing desktop research, trying to learn everything we could about the space. We were just so bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, hungry, like really believed we could crack this, and in like a few months we'd be able to solve it, and then we'd be able to get to market, and then we'd have this great revenue trajectory and these projections, and like all of it was wrong. It was all completely wrong. But I think it takes a certain fresh perspective when you're looking at a new industry to even dare take a bold step in a direction that this industry has never really moved.
Well, I'm glad you had those bushy-eyed projections like that, and it enabled you to start, because I think it's a product that many people need. So when you made those projections, you obviously had a way you thought you were going to solve it. And when you actually went to solve it that way, was that right? What did you have to do to actually, did you try to solve for the whole world at once, for all the immigrants to the States? How did you figure out how to crack this? And sort of what was your first innovation?
When we first started, we were going through this class called Lean Launchpad, which is taught by Steve Blank, who's one of these great innovation thinkers out here in the Valley. And he sort of preaches the MVP, the minimum viable product, as his methodology. The way we actually, like, the first version of our product was my co-founder Nikki, who should have been here in my place tonight. We went and got her credit report from the UK. We literally went to one of the credit bureaus in the UK. We downloaded the report. We looked at it. We reformatted it, and then we walked into bank branches and we're like, "Hey, can we get credit with this?" And we just like brute force right into the bank branches. And if you know about how banks work and how they make financial risk-based decisions, like none of that actually happens in the bank branch. It actually happens with underwriters in some like central office or in New York or anything like that. But it allowed us to learn about the space. Yeah. And I think it was that early learning that allowed us to start to chip away at the problem, at what a solution could look like around how the current technology works in that in banking systems.
So you're saying she didn't get credit?
So everybody said no. Yeah, unfortunately, everybody said no. And I mean, we 4 years later, we now work with companies like American Express, and we've now gotten her an American Express card. But it's been a battle.
And so you get this rejection. What seemed obvious to you wasn't going to work. So what actually worked? How did you find that first? What was your first breakthrough?
Well, I think we always, from the very beginning, thought about this problem as a multi-sided marketplace, where on one side, you've got to get access to unique information, unique data. And on the other side, you have to deliver that information to enterprises that want to win this consumer. And so in order to get this business off the ground, you have to have breakthroughs on both sides of the aisle. And so from the very beginning, Nikki and I sort of divided up, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go supply and you're going to go demand, and like, let's go see what we can figure out. And one of the first breakthroughs was we actually managed to get our first contract, our first supply contract. So we managed to, as a 3-person company, we were going through Y Combinator at the time, sign up a partnership with one of the 2 leading credit bureaus in Mexico, build the integration, and all of a sudden we were the first company in the world that could access Mexican credit data and deliver that into the US. And then we had a couple other breakthroughs of other countries that we managed to get on the platform. And then we managed to get our first customer. And I think that was the first real breakthrough where we got the whole flywheel to start to work, where we had access to information, and we had one customer who was actually Empower. They're an international student lender based out of DC, who was our first customer. And we managed to get them, I think, Mexican, Indian, and Canadian data was actually the start.
Interesting. And so you got the supply of data. How did that work? Did I, if let's say I was going back to get my PhD or master's right now, whatever school would let me in for some reason in the States, would I have to go approach you to get my credit history? Would I have to get an account there? Like, I guess once you got the supply, what was the next problem you had to solve? Did you have to get awareness? Did you have to get demand, or did you have to get awareness with the students or the immigrants? What was the step?
Yeah, that one's taken a lot of trial and error to figure out. The way it works in practice is banks are the decision makers, right? Banks decide whether or not this information is valid. And so even if I go and find Alex online or find a way to get you and get you your credit report, you're going to walk into bank branches and they're going to say, what is this? I don't know that you didn't tamper with this, or how do I rely on this? And so ultimately you have to, at least in our business, clear the bank sales cycle. So actually get to market with large financial institutions, which as I reflect on, we're now four years old as a business. I sort of completely missed sales cycles. They're actually really hard, and they take, unfortunately, in the world of banking, years to get one of these banks to start working with you. because you have to go build the organizational buy-in to even consider you. You have to go satisfy their information security and their compliance standards. You have to get on their roadmap. You have to go through a pilot. Those pilots can take several quarters, and only then do you have a shot of actually getting out the door.
So I'm curious, how big of an opportunity was this for those banks? Like how much lending were they missing out on?
Yeah, I mean, the way we've framed the opportunity is really one around shifting demographics in this country. So if you look at the U.S., about 55% of U.S. population growth comes from net migration. That means that there are more people who move to the U.S. every year than there are new Americans born or turning 18. You look at major metros like San Francisco or New York or Miami. They're, SF's 35% foreign born. New York's close to 40. Miami's just over 50%. There are only two cities that I'm aware of. Outside, they're fine. There's three cities I'm aware of that have a higher penetration of newcomers and newcomers. Toronto,
51%.
Dubai, and Vancouver are higher. And so it was a demographic argument that, if you want to find, a blue ocean opportunity as a chief marketing officer, you need to find a way to find this customer segment. This is really attractive, exciting customers that are currently completely invisible to you in terms of your credit systems.
So it seems like an obvious opportunity, especially for banks that are operating in big metropolitan areas. So what you said, you have to go through this huge sales process. So how do they react when you came in there saying, "Hey, I can now unlock the Mexican immigrant market for you"? And why was it so difficult?
So many reasons. I mean, I was on a panel a few months ago with a group of bank executives, and I was like, if you didn't know, it's really hard to sell to you because there are conflicting priorities. It's a big organization. There are they do reorgs fairly frequently. And when you have a multi-year sales cycle, if you have reorgs that happen every 2 to 4 years, like all of a sudden who you thought was your champion, your bench of supporters are all of a sudden, in a different part of the business. And that makes getting these sales through incredibly complicated. And when you're just getting started, they want to see case studies. They want to see proof points that this actually works. They're asking questions around, is this business going to be around in 3 to 5 years? And so building that credibility takes time.
Interesting. So you've got a point where you got the supply, you got some demand. So let's say I know you have the partnership with Amex. Do the consumers know this exists, or do people still assume, hey, I just moved here from England, I've heard it's impossible to get a bank card? Or they just now, can they go to Citibank and Citibank automatically takes care of it? Do they have to be a customer of Nova Credit? How do you build awareness with the consumers? Because it seems like you have a three-sided marketplace here.
Yeah, you're right. It is depending on how you look at it, you can think of consumer and enterprise as one demand side, or you can think of them as two separate sides. So supply side, definitely one side. I used to think about consumer and enterprise as two separate sides. Now I kind of think of them mostly as one. So if you go to our website, novacredit.com, it's actually consumer facing. So you can go there, you can pull your credit history, you can apply for cards, including an Amex right through us. But the only way that works is if enterprises already accept our infrastructure. Yeah. Right. And so like the number of cards, you won't see like Chase on there as an example, because Chase is not currently a customer. They don't use our credit infrastructure. And so you can't get a Chase Sapphire using our systems until Chase is actually plugged in, and then we could route consumers to them. But basically the way we've always thought about this is, Amex, to keep using them as an example, they have a multi-billion-dollar marketing budget that's a multiple of what we are. And consumers can go to Amex across all the channels that they have plugged in. And in the middle of that application, once it's determined that you don't have a U.S. credit history, we can access your foreign history to get you approved.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so they built it almost in their application process. That's a pretty good hack. And I know I was reading a bit about the history of Nova Credit, and I saw that you did a bunch of partnerships with like immigration organizations or immigration groups. What was the purpose of that, and why did that work out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the candid view is it's really hard to be both an enterprise. It's different muscles, it's different competency, it's different risk tolerance, it's different release cycles for engineering, and a lot of that effort was experimentation to try to bring eyeballs to our website, to try to build a brand, to try to become a source of truth, a destination. There's everybody listening here, to the extent you ever choose to move to the US, my hope is that you would come to our site to learn about how to reestablish yourself financially. But that, if you think about this, the volume there relative to what these behemoth marketing organizations at Amex and some of the others can do, it's night and day. They just have much more firepower.
And now that you've established that there's a market here, you've established that it's possible to do it. And I think one thing I read is that every country has a different way of setting credit. I think France didn't have a central credit bureau. So did you have to create so a couple questions. One is, did you have to figure out a different solution to normalize credit from all different countries? And have you figured that out? And how did you do that?
Yeah, so every country has a different standard. I mean, the US and Canada are relatively similar. The UK is quite similar. But then you have countries like France. It's the only G20 economy that doesn't have a central credit bureau. They only have a credit registry. And so every country, you've got to figure out your own way of how does this, packet of raw materials of supply plug into our refined product, which we call a credit passport, right? The same way that your passport is how you travel the world, your credit passport is how you access financial services globally. And we've been fortunate in hiring one of the best in the business to help us standardize credit information, and she's got the secret sauce to how we do that. Interesting.
And so you built something up. You proven there's demand, or I assume you have, because it seems like from the outside in things are going well. What's to stop someone else saying, okay, let me go to all the same credit bureaus you're working with and just copy what you're doing? Why doesn't Amex go do it themselves? Why do they need you?
It's a nightmare. I mean, every one of these integrations takes them a year. We've got several dozen countries on the platform now, including Canada. I saw some notes about Canada. I haven't quite read them, but a few notes about Canada. We've got both integrations in Canada. We work with both Equifax and TransUnion. And it's a lot of technical work. For an organization like Amex to build anything like this would take them many more years than what it's taken us, and they can get the benefit of all of it through one platform.
Yeah, so you've got an easy solution. Where are you? How far are you in the journey? I noticed you just before the pandemic hit North America. It looks like you raised around. I assume that means you're got big plans for the next 24 to 36 months. So what's next, and what are you doing different now than were doing 3 years ago? What's your big learnings?
I think we've still got a healthy dose of naive optimism. I think that's the only way you keep going in this, down the entrepreneurial path. I think the reality is the timing of our Series B was, pure luck, but couldn't have been any better. We're lucky to be in such a well-capitalized position where we can continue to play offense in an environment where immigration has contracted significantly with borders closed, credit applications are down significantly, and it's a tough environment to build a business in. But we're fortunate to have an incredible team, a clear mission, and the capital to continue to fuel us forward.
So I like to pick up on something you said there. So obviously immigration is down right now because of the pandemic, and it's hard to get on a plane or to just go anywhere right now. Seems like politics are also changing and making it less favorable for immigration. So how do you worry about long-term trends? How do you get involved with that? What's your perspective on the type, is it big headwinds, or is it something that you still have so much to do that it doesn't make a difference?
I think the honest truth is we're looking at several quarter period where overall volumes of immigration, whether that be the US or Canada, are down. And that is a fact. It's an unfortunate fact from a business model and company velocity perspective, but as a leader in the organization, we still have to execute. We still have to motivate our team. We still have to push forward. So, my belief is that COVID will not kill the American or the Canadian dream. They're here to stay, and people will still move to North America for opportunity, for love, for education. But we are looking at a period where that will push out into 2021 or 2022. And so as a business, we have to adapt, and that's forcing us to accelerate some of our longer term product thinking about how do we expand the customer segment that we serve. And that's been a lot of fun work over the last few months.
And talking about expanding that customer segment, I think I read that your initial product's good for someone that has credit already when they leave, like let's say Mexico and go to the States, or Canada go to the States. But in lots of these countries, a lot of people don't have credit, and that there's a possible solution there. So would love to know, how do you view that? I guess the uncredited, I don't know if there's such a word, there's unbanked, but are these the same thing as unbanked, or is this just
credit invisible, I guess what you're saying.
Okay, credit invisible, okay.
To use some of our jargon, I think it's a really hard question that you're asking.
Yeah.
We've started. We'd love to solve every credit data problem there is out there, but you have to pick your battles when you start. And we've learned that the hard way from, trying to execute and doing too many things at the same. We tried to launch in Canada in 2017, way too soon. We were a 10-person team.
Okay.
We learned the hard way not to do that. We'll be back, I promise.
And when you want to come back, talk to us. We'll help you set up.
Thank you. But the core of where we've started to solve is by solving information asymmetry, where data exists in one market and doesn't exist in another. And if there's a lot of data in that market, there's enough to get somebody approved across borders. But if you're in your home country, you actually don't have any information, then moving no information across borders doesn't serve any purpose. And so we've really focused first on people that have a thick credit file. That's where we can solve a very clear problem. And as we continue to grow and expand, there are alternative data solutions that we believe are out there that can serve more people.
Excellent. And if you were to give the people that are on this program right now a piece of advice about starting a business, or what's one or two top pieces of advice, other than being very optimistic and naive when you start? What's the biggest two takeaways you have?
I remember, as an immigrant myself, and I imagine many of the folks on the phone may be on video, that is, one of the biggest challenges is actually like finding the courage to take a leap and start a business. Like I imagine, not everybody here has already taken that leap and is working on something full time or is still in a job, but has some idea or some interest in some problem space. And it's really hard to find that courage to actually go for it. To the risk feels so huge, to sacrifice, my pedigree, to sacrifice all the hard work, to potentially fail, to disappoint my parents or my grandparents or my family. And I don't mean to dismiss that entrepreneurship comes with risk, that, the vast majority of startups do fail. But I think a lot of people look at that risk reward equation and they struggle to take the step to actually do it. And some of the best piece of advice I've ever gotten when I was really struggling with whether or not to even give this a shot was a quote that has still stuck with me, which is, you can never cross a chasm in 2 steps. It always takes one giant leap. And what that means to me is, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, you're constantly trying to de-risk the problem, to get closer to getting over this ledge. But the more you learn, actually, the more you realize you don't know. And there will always be a leap of faith to get started. And it always takes it will always take courage to get over that. And for those that are struggling with that, I can empathize. And my, finding solace in a quote like that has gone a long way for me in taking the first step.
I really appreciate your time, Misha. I appreciate your patience. Our technology didn't work perfectly today, but you stuck around. You came and gave us some advice. And, and I love that we started off with Jim telling people entrepreneurs have to be crazy. And you said you have to be bold and to take that first step. So entrepreneurship is definitely not easy, but we had some great leaders here to share knowledge tonight. Thank you so much, Misha.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and have a good evening.
You too.